Welcome to Victorian England. Not the polite drawing rooms of period dramas, but the real one. A world of choking fog and roaring furnaces, of horse dung and gaslight, of empire and destitution. This is Britain between 1837 and 1901. 64 years that changed humanity forever. When 18-year-old Victoria took the throne in 1837, Britain was still largely rural. Most people lived in villages. They traveled by horseback or stagecoach. They lit their homes with tallow candles. But within a single generation, that world vanished. The cause was steam. Not just locomotives, though they were spectacular. Steam pumps, steam looms, steam-powered printing presses. In 1840, the average train speed was 30 miles per hour, faster than any human had ever traveled on land. By 1850, Britain had 6,000 miles of railway track. Towns that once felt days apart became hours away. Fresh fish from the coast reached London in time for breakfast. Clocks across the country finally showed the same time because trains demanded timetables. Before railways, every town had its own local time. After railways, Greenwich Mean Time conquered the nation.
But the real engine of change was the factory. Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, Sheffield, these were not gentle places. They were cities of soot and smoke. The novelist Charles Dickens described Manchester as a place where every mill emitted a long coil of black smoke. In 1840, a cotton worker labored 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Children as young as 5 worked under machinery. The Factory Act of 1833 tried to stop this, banning children under 9 from textile mills. But enforcement was laughably weak. Factory owners simply lied about children's ages. A child with a missing finger or a curved spine was a common sight. The air itself was deadly. London fog was not weather, it was pollution. Households burned cheap coal by the ton. Factories added their own filth. In December 1952, the Great Smog would kill thousands, but Victorian London had similar, though smaller events every winter. People called it a pea super. You could not see your own hand. Carts crashed into each other. Pedestrians fell into the Thames. Hospitals filled with men and women who could not breathe. And yet, the Victorians were proud of this smog. They called it the London particular. To them, it smelled like progress. Progress, however, had two faces. While the rich dined on turtle soup and roasted swan, the poor ate bread adulterated with alum, chalk, and even plaster of Paris. A third of working-class children died before their 5th birthday. In the worst slums of London, areas with names like the Devil's Acre and the Rookery, families of 8 lived in single rooms without windows. A shared privy might serve 50 people. Cholera returned every few years, killing tens of thousands. Doctors did not yet know that contaminated water caused the disease. They blamed miasma, bad air. One man changed that, Dr. John Snow. In 1854, a terrible cholera outbreak struck Soho, near the intersection of Broad Street and Cambridge Street. Snow mapped every death. He found they all clustered around a single water pump. He convinced the parish council to remove the pump handle. The outbreak stopped. It was the birth of epidemiology. But it took another decade before London finally built a modern sewage system designed by Joseph Bazalgette. He constructed over 1,000 miles of brick sewers under London.
The result was astonishing. Cholera vanished from the capital. Other cities copied the model. The Victorians, through trial and terrible error, invented public health. Meanwhile, the British Empire grew so vast that politicians joked the sun never set on it. By 1900, Britain controlled a quarter of the world's land. India was the crown jewel, source of tea, cotton, and opium. British gunboats forced China to accept opium imports, starting the Opium Wars. At home, this empire brought sugar, rubber, and incredible wealth to a tiny elite. But it also brought moral unease. The same people who built cathedrals and founded hospitals also oversaw famines in Ireland and India. In 1845, the potato blight destroyed Ireland's staple crop. British officials continued to export grain and livestock from Ireland to England while millions starved. 1 million Irish died. Another million fled, mostly to America. Victorian society was obsessed with respectability. The middle classes grew fast. Clerks, shopkeepers, teachers, engineers. They built rows of identical houses with bay windows and front gardens. They bought pianos and dictionaries and framed photographs. They read self-help books by Samuel Smiles, who preached that any man could rise through thrift and hard work, and many did. But the price was conformity. A woman who bore a child out of wedlock was ruined. A man who declared himself an atheist lost his job. Divorce was almost impossible until 1857, and even then, women had far fewer rights than men. The family was a strict hierarchy. The father was the head. His word was law. Children were to be seen and not heard. Servants were invisible. A middle-class household of 5 might employ 3 servants, a maid, a cook, and a nursemaid. These servants worked from 6 in the morning until 11 at night, with 1 half-day off per week. They ate in the basement. They slept in attic rooms with no fire. They were never, ever to be seen by guests. Their labor made the Victorian home possible. Yet this same era produced extraordinary invention. The telegraph, invented by William Cooke and Charles Wheatstone, shrank the world. By 1866, a cable under the Atlantic connected London to New York. News that once took weeks now took minutes. The telephone followed in 1876, the typewriter in 1868. The bicycle in the 1880s, a machine that gave young people unprecedented freedom. The safety bicycle, with 2 wheels of equal size, allowed women to wear divided skirts and ride unchaperoned. Conservative clergymen warned that cycling would destroy female morality. It did nothing of the sort, but it did help the women's suffrage movement. And speaking of women, Victorian England produced the first organized feminist movement. In 1866, Barbara Bottichon and Emily Davies presented a petition for women's suffrage. Parliament laughed, but they did not stop. By the 1890s, women were studying at Cambridge and London universities. The new woman smoked cigarettes, rode bicycles, and demanded careers. Queen Victoria herself hated the idea. She called feminism that mad, wicked folly. But the Queen was old by then. The future belonged to the suffragettes. The Victorian era was also the great age of Christmas as we know it. Before Victoria, Christmas was a rowdy, drunken carnival. Prince Albert brought the German tradition of the Christmas tree to Windsor Castle in 1848. Illustrated London News published a drawing of the royal family around a decorated tree. The middle classes copied it immediately. Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol in 1843. It almost single-handedly invented the idea of Christmas as a family festival of charity, feasting, and goodwill. Suddenly, everyone wanted turkey, mince pies, and cards. The first commercial Christmas card was printed in 1843. By 1880, the post office handled millions. But beneath the tinsel, poverty remained brutal. In the 1880s, journalist Andrew Mearns published The Bitter Cry of Outcast London. He described rooms where the foul and fetid air reeks with pestilence. He wrote of families sleeping on old sacks in cellars flooded with sewage. The public was shocked, not because they didn't know, but because someone had finally said it aloud. The government began building model housing. Charities like the Salvation Army set up soup kitchens and shelters. Change came slowly, but it came. The end of the Victorian era was marked by death. Queen Victoria died on January 22, 1901, at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight. She was 81 years old. She had reigned so long that most of her subjects had never known another monarch. Her funeral was white, not black, at her own request. And with her passed an entire world. The factories still smoked. The empire still stretched across the globe. But something was ending. The Edwardian years that followed would be a brief, glittering pause before the catastrophe of the First World War. So when we remember Victorian England, we should not see only corsets and carriages. We should see the first industrial cities, choking on their own brilliance. We should see the sewers beneath London, the railways cutting through green fields, the telegraph wires humming with messages. We should see a society inventing itself, cruelly, brilliantly, often hypocritically. The Victorians gave us modern government, modern medicine, modern Christmas, and modern doubt. They were not saints, they were not monsters, they were us, but earlier, and they built the world we still live in. That is Victorian England. Unequal, inventive, devout, and greedy. A time of astonishing light and appalling darkness, and absolutely unforgettable.